Hello, everybody. My name is Jenny, and I'm going to be giving you a walkthrough of WebWork Time Tracker's features and how to navigate them. So let's jump right into it. When you first open the application, you're going to be met with this small square window right here. Now, in the home section, you can see the overview of your track time from today and the total of this week. Above that, you can see your attendance status, which basically just shows if you were late or on time. By toggling the timer above, you can turn your tracker off or on. You might notice the small coffee icon right underneath that. This is where you can select your break. We'll get into the details regarding break policies and the feature itself once we open up the browser version, where we can see some more details. Below the home section is where you can manage your projects and tasks. As you can see, I don't have any projects or tasks currently selected. In order to do so, I simply have to go to select project, and for me, that would look like the partnerships project, which is what I'm working on. And then I can select the corresponding task, which for me would be the partnership with Todoist. Once I start tracking with this task, my colleagues will be able to see what I'm working on right now. And it will also be visible in future data. For example, here in project time details, it's very similar to what we saw in the home section where you can see your track time, but here it's only in relation to specific projects you've worked on. For example, you can see that I have worked a total of only 21 minutes on the partnerships project today and a total of 1 hour and 18 minutes on no specific project for the entire week. Right underneath that, you can see your shift or multiple shifts if you have them. This just tells you what time you need to clock in and out of work and if there's a minimum amount of hours that I need to work every day and for which days and in which time zone. Right underneath that is where you can see your recent screenshots. These are screenshots that WebWork recently took of your screen, but don't worry, you have full control over who can view these screenshots right from the settings. WebWork is a very sophisticated software. Especially if it's your first time using a time tracker at all, it's understandable if you run into some difficulty with navigating it. We understand this, which is why you have the ability to access our help center right from the tracker itself. This is where you can find the answer to pretty much any question you might have about WebWork. Right underneath that is where you can access the tracker settings. These are just the basic settings, and the more advanced settings are in the browser version, which we'll get into a little bit later. Here, you can select how many monitors can be captured. This is especially useful when some monitors are being used for work purposes, while other monitors are being used for personal activities, like listening to music. You can also select the background mode for your screenshots, which just means that the pop-up won't show when you do get a screenshot of your screen. However, we do have more advanced settings regarding the screenshots in the browser version. Here, you can also select Auto Run. This just means that WebWork will turn on automatically and start tracking the moment you turn on your device. This is especially useful for company-provided devices, which you know for a fact you'll only be using when you're working anyway. However, I don't recommend activating Auto Run if you're using a personal device. You can also select Auto Updates. This just means that WebWork will update automatically whenever a new version is available. Again, if it's your first time using a time tracker, I completely understand. It definitely took some time for me to get used to turning a tracker on whenever I would clock into work, but these reminders really helped me. So you can enable or disable these if you'd like. And if you're like me and you love to customize absolutely everything, then you'll really love our ability to have your own theme settings. We have a light mode and a dark mode to select from. Of course, you can also just use your system settings to make it less manual. However, I usually prefer the dark mode, so I think I will keep this one on. Beneath the settings, you can select your account and you can refresh your data, check for updates, contact our very helpful customer support team, send logs, sign out, or quit the application. Of course, the real magic happens when you open the browser version. This is where you can find more advanced reports, features, and settings. And in order to do so, you can click on Go to Dashboard if you want the general overview, the reports, or you can even access our chat, as WebWork offers video and chat services as well for the entire team. Of course, since the dashboard is usually what you're going to see the moment you turn on the browser version, then I think we could go there right now. So let's hop in. And here is the dashboard of the browser version. So the dashboard is usually where you're going to see first when you open up the browser version. And this is a very general overview of what's been going on in your workspace. You can access the settings from here. You can see how many members you have. And you can even see the productivity progression from today, this week, last week, etc. You can see today's activity from all of your members and as well as a general productivity score. You could see which non productive apps and members there have been from today or from this week. And you can even see your top performing members. And this is especially good if you have a competitive work environment. You can also see today's activity based best and worst performers. Oh, I guess that's me. And you can even see the projects, tasks, and apps that you currently have ongoing or in use. Here you can manage your tasks. You can see which were completed on time, which ones are approaching, which ones have been missed entirely, and how many are done or completed. Here you can see how many missed or approaching deadlines you have, and a few of the most recent screenshots that have been shared. And you have the option to invite new members, enable integrations, and etc. As mentioned, while this does seem pretty detailed already, this is just a general overview, and you could find even more details in the advanced analytics and report section, which we will get into in a quick moment. For now, I want to show you the timesheets. So you can view and edit your timesheet. So when you're working, what you are working on, and the total time spent. You also have time requests, two sections underneath, and here you could just see the manually added time. Of course, you can have this feature disabled in your settings if you do not want your members manually adding their time. Of course, even if time is manually added, they do need to be approved or rejected. For example, if I want to add time, I simply go here, I write the date, I write who it is for. In this case, it would be for myself, which project and task that I was working on this moment. I select the time frame, and I could even add an activity description in my own words if I'd like. Then, if you're the owner or executive manager, these manually added time additions will be automatically approved of. Of course, depending on the permissions you have in your workspace, these additions will need to be either approved or rejected. Then you can go to timesheet approval. So here is where you can see which timesheets for the week have been submitted, which ones are approved and rejected, and which ones are still open, meaning they aren't finalized yet. Then you go to Time Editor, and here you can actually edit every single minute and hour that you spent with your tracker turned on. So this is especially useful for the most accurate data. Now, here is the fun part, which is the analysis. Here in the Analyze section, you can access real time, and this is actually one of my favorite WebWork features because it's kind of like looking into somebody's cubicle. You can see exactly what they're working on, and here, oh, you can see that's already updating in real time. So you can see, for example, Arman, a very good colleague of mine, is working on the new Pages project, the tracking billable hours accurately task. Not sure what that is, as we do not work on the same team, but I'm sure he's being very productive. And he actually has an activity description, which is optional, that he's writing content, he's on the desktop app, and he's currently using Slack, and he is online. Now, you might notice the difference in colors and names for these statuses. Online basically shows if a user is currently tracking or working, meaning their tracker is on. Offline means that they did turn their tracker on or start working at some point throughout the day, but they currently have the tracker off. Absent just means that this person did not turn their tracker on at any time throughout the day until this moment. And you will also be able to see if somebody is on leave or vacation, meaning they are absent, but they have the full right to be. And that would usually be shown in yellow, not red. So this is constantly updating in real time. You could see, for example, Armina is right now using Google Chrome. Now, some users get a bit confused when they see things like Google Chrome. Well, how do I know what website they're on? That's really important. If they are on a recognized website like LinkedIn, for example, then it will not be showing Google Chrome. It will simply show LinkedIn and LinkedIn's icon or logo. Google Chrome just means that the user currently has their search bar open and is not using a specific website. And here you can see, for example, Arax is using WordPress. Arman is using Google Docs, probably on his browser, from what I've seen. So, yeah, Google Chrome and recognized websites are communicated differently in this section right here. And keep in mind that the apps and websites also has its very own feature that we will be getting into very, very soon. You can search for specific members, teams, projects if you're looking for something specific. For example, if you have a team of about, I don't know, 100 or 50 members, then scrolling down obviously isn't going to be very efficient if you just want to get a peek into what somebody specific is currently working on. So you totally have the option to select somebody specific. Of course, you also have a little overview here about who's on leave, on break, how many people were absent today, offline, and who's currently working. You also have the ability to see who's currently being non productive. We'll get into the specificities of non productivity a little bit later when we get into the difference between activity and productivity. For now, let's go to the report section, which is again under Analyze. Here, when you open it up, you see a long column full of all of the advanced analytics that you can see. So let's start with tracked hours. This is very similar to what we saw in the small square window when you first open the application in the home screen. Here you can see how many tracked hours people have on specific dates and the total tracked hours they have for the entire week so far. You can also search for specific members, and this is pretty much a continuous feature regardless of the analytics that you're looking at. You could search for specific projects, titles, etc. Now, here in the timeline is where we're going to see a very, very in-depth view of what people have been working on and when. For example, Arax is the star of the show today. I could see that from 9:13 a.m. till 10:58 a.m., she had an average of 11 mouse clicks per minute, an average of 27 keyboard movements per minute, and that she was working on the New Pages project. And she also has her own activity description there as well. Which brings us to a very nice feature where you have a lot of color coding to differentiate between different types of information. For example, the gray is supposed to represent idle time, meaning they were not physically active on their device, so no keyboard strokes, no mouse movements, pretty much not doing anything. That's idle time. Next, we have the attendance feature. And here you can see people's attendance statuses, meaning if they were later on time, as mentioned before. And you can even see when they were supposed to start their shift, which is especially useful if different colleagues start at different times. And when they actually started working, meaning when they actually turned their tracker on. For example, you could see that I was late as I turned my tracker on at 14:27, even though I was supposed to start at 10 a.m. So that is not looking very good for me. And you can also see, if you're my employer, that I'm still tracking time or making up for lost time. And you can also see if somebody ended their shift. So, for example, I could see that Gohar finished her shift at 16:25, or at least that was the last time that they stopped tracking. Next, we have the activity level. So, WebWork has activity level and productivity level. So, what's the difference between these two things? Activity level describes whether a user or member of your workspace is physically active and interactive with their device, meaning they're using their keyboard, mouse, touchpad, etc. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're being productive. Maybe they're using their keyboard and touchpad, but they're using YouTube. So, this is why we have the productivity feature as well, which tells you whether you're using productive apps and websites. You can see how physically active and interactive a user has been with their device. So Armine has been 100% active all day long, which is amazing. Then we have Gohar, who was 49% active, which is not bad. Then we have me, and clearly I have only been 26 and 10% active. Um, do not tell my boss, but it's a good thing that you are able to see if you have any employees like me who have only been 10% active, and you can also see who is the top performer so far. Next up, we have the activity descriptions. These are basically what your colleagues write in their own words about what they're currently working on. For example, they might have selected a specific project and task, but might want to add some more specifics about what they're doing, especially if a task has different parts or details regarding it. So, for example, we can see that Arman's description was writing content while he was tracking with the new pages project selected. And the more you scroll, you could see for which date this was and for how long they had this activity description on. So for Arman, he was working on writing content for almost 6 hours, which is a lot if you ask me. Next up, we have the apps and websites feature underneath the report section. So, why am I emphasizing the section that it falls under? Because we actually have two features named apps and websites. However, they are different a little bit. So, under the report section, which is the one we're currently showing, this is just a report. It's just some hard information about which apps and websites were used by whom and for how long, and the relation between their activity level and the software or app that the colleague or employee was using. So you have this for pretty much every single app or website that's being used by your team. And you can, of course, select specific members, projects, and etc. Next up, we have tasks. So this is going to show you how many tasks you have, which projects they belong to, which member it pertains to, the date and duration that it was being worked on. So this is a really good way for you to see the priority level of certain tasks and pretty much who's working hard. You have the option to select it by hours or by the amount if your employees have a specific hourly wage. We will get into this with a bit more detail once we go into the finance section. Whether you're an employee or owner, you know the importance of breaks. You also know the importance of tracking them to make sure that everybody's worked hours are accurate. So here you can see the break policy selected by which member, on which date, how long that break took them, and the type of break, meaning paid or unpaid. So paid breaks do show up in the track time of members, whereas unpaid breaks do not show up in track time. As for the break policies themselves, you can select and create different break policies in your settings. For example, we have a fresh air break policy as well as a lunch policy. You have full control over whether or not these break policies are paid for, unpaid, and you can even select how long the maximum amount of time spent on these breaks can be. Here in the finance feature from the report section, you can see people's activity descriptions, their hourly rates, and the relation between their hourly rates and the actual hours they've worked. So at the end, you can see the total amount that is owed to them. Next up, we have again a fairly new feature, which is project budgeting. So here you can see the projects that you currently have ongoing, the estimated budget you set for them, and how much of that budget you and your members have actually spent on these projects. You can see how many hours have spent in relation to the finances as well, and you could even track the expenses if you have any. So, for example, you could see that for outbound marketing, we had an estimated budget of about 1,000 USD. However, we've only actually spent $164.84 on the outbound marketing project. If you scroll a little bit to the side, you could see the status, which basically just indicates if it's underspent or overspent. Here, WebWork automatically calculates for you how much you have remaining from that budget, and you can even see it in percentages. But that is not all. You also have the option to view the project overview. So you select a specific project that you want to see in more detail, and you can even see how much money was spent per task. Then you could even access the summaries for each one. Here you see that you have 12 active projects. You could see the total estimated budget of all of them, total spent, your total remainder, and your total time tracked. If you scroll down, you'll see the estimated project budgets in relation to one another, the amounts spent by the project, and even your budget statuses. Here you can even see all of your overspent projects, and luckily, we have none so far. WebWork also allows you the option to schedule your reports. So you can select a specific report or all of them, for example, tracked hours or activity description, and have scheduled emails sent to you with all of the necessary information. Let's close up the report section for now and move on to monitoring. So, this is where you can see the screenshots taken of your employees' screens. So, you can select for specific members. I'm just going to view, let's see, maybe Audax. And you could also select a specific project that you know this member has been working on if that's important to you. You'll notice that if you hover your cursor over a screenshot, you're going to see the ability to maximize it and view some details. For example, you could see that this screenshot is blurry because it had the blurred screenshot mode enabled, and we have their overall activity level, their mouse movements and keyboard and scroll movements per minute, and even a total cumulative average actions per minute, which in Onyx's case is 34.4 average actions per minute. And here you might see minutes. So, what does that mean? This just means that all of the information that we see right here was within 7 minutes, meaning that the screenshot was taken once and then she worked, according to these statistics. And then this screenshot that we see right here was taken after another 7 minutes. Now to productivity. So, under productivity, you can see productivity insights. So, this is going to give you really detailed descriptions of how productive your team members have been. So, you can see this per member, per team, or for the entire general workspace. So, just to keep it simple, I'm going to look at it per member. Again, I guess Armina is the star of the show. She is our prime example in this case. I can see that she has tracked 19 hours and 54 minutes so far. Her attendance is no absences, she's not on leave, she has not tracked less, she has not left early, though she has been late 3 times within the past week. You have her productivity insights and even reports regarding her specific app and website usage. So you could see the activity level, the inactive time spent, the total, and these are for the productive apps. Although you could also get a look specifically at the non productive apps, and no data means that she has not been using any non productive apps whatsoever. So I guess she is pretty much our star employee for today. Here you could see her activity levels for different days to see how consistent or inconsistent the employee, in this case, Armina, has been for the entire week, basically. You also have the inactive time, engagement level, categories of the app and website usage, and whether or not she's had any meetings and calls. Now, here is the other app and website feature that I mentioned before earlier in the video. So, this is the one under the productivity section, unlike the one that was under the reports section. So, this is where you can actually interact with the settings regarding all of the apps and websites your team uses. So, as you can see, we use, I guess, dozens and dozens of apps and websites, but don't worry, you don't need to manually add all of these apps and websites to your workspace. WebWork automatically adds these apps and websites to your workspace the moment somebody has their tracker on and logs into a specific app or website. You can enable the productivity levels for the entire workspace per team or per title, meaning for specific managers, for designers, etc. So let's use the sales team as our example. As we can see, Slack is unset, but we can change that. We usually use Slack only for work purposes, so we could mark this as productive or neutral. Social media is, well, unproductive, but this is LinkedIn we're talking about, so we could set this as neutral. And ChatGPT for us is usually productive, so I'll give our team the benefit of the doubt. And then we have something like Spotify. We are not in the music industry, so I'm going to mark that as unproductive. So, what does this mean? Based on which apps and websites are marked as productive, neutral, or non productive, this is going to affect the productivity levels of your team members. Of course, different apps and websites will be either productive or non productive for different teams. So you have full control over this in order to ensure that your colleagues' activity and productivity levels are always accurate. And while it is always really good to be very productive at work, we do understand that work life balance does exist. So we turned it into a feature. Your work life balance basically indicates whether an employee is healthy, meaning they have a good work life balance, they have worked all of the hours that they needed to, but they have not worked more, or underworked, meaning that they have not been completing their hours or have not been very active nor productive. And yellow basically means that the individual is overworked. So they're working way too many hours and they are way too productive. So this is a really good way to see if any of your employees need a push forward or just an extra vacation. This is why we added the burnout risk. So, how's it calculated? WebWork understands if an employee is overworked by showing the number of days that the member worked is more than 9 hours, if they've been working irregular hours or working without rest. So, in this case, that would be over 4 hours of work nonstop, no breaks or pauses or idle time or anything, and high activity, especially without rest. A lot of this can be configured in your settings though. Moving on to the management section, let's start with the members. So, this is how you're going to be able to invite new members either by bulk or individually through links, for example. So, you could also see the members and their details. So, for example, you could see Lili's working hour limit for each week would be 25 hours. Her hourly rate is 25 USD. She is an executive manager in WebWork and she is part of the marketing and financials teams. Her job title is in management, and here are the actions. You could either archive the member, which means you keep their data in your workspace, but they are no longer going to track or interact with the workspace. So, the moment you archive a member means that you will no longer be paying for them, but you can add them back very, very easily whenever you want, and they won't have to log into the workspace all over again when you do. Opposed to when you delete a member, in which case you still do not pay for them, but if you do want to add them back in the future, all of their data will be lost within your workspace and they'll basically be added again as a new member all over again. From the member section, you could also view their timesheets and payrolls. You could view their onboarding status, meaning have they accepted the invitation to join the workspace, have they logged in, have they tracked time, and more. And here is where you could view if you do have any archived members, meaning people who are no longer a part of your workspace or company, but can be very easily added back as if nothing happened in the future if you need to. Next up, we have teams. Now, this is a very straightforward process to create teams. For example, we have marketing teams, we have financials teams, and in order to create a team, you just go all the way to the top, add new team, scroll down, and write the team name. For example, WebWork users. And after that, you simply take specific employees and drop them there. And boom, you have a new team with all of the members who need to be a part of it. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. You can also scroll back up and view the team free members to make sure that everybody is part of a team and to see if you missed anybody. Then we have titles. Creating titles is pretty much the same as with the teams. You add a new title, you write the name, for example, head of sales. And then you search for specific members. I'll search for myself. You drag and drop. So, again, it's a very, very straightforward process. And we also have project viewers. So, what are project viewers in WebWork? Project viewers are members that you can add for free. You do not need to pay a dime for them. The only difference between a project viewer and other members of your teams who are paid for is the fact that they cannot track time nor make many changes in your workspace. So they are assigned specific projects or analytics or reports that you allow them to, and they're able to view all of the information that is available to them, which is especially good if you have third parties who are involved in what your company is working on but aren't your actual employees. Next up, we have the project section. So, this is how you create projects. You come here to the top. You can select an icon. I'm going to choose the silly one. You have the naming, for example, sales best team. You can have a start and end date for the project, see whether or not it is billable, and also add specific notes if need be. This is where you select which members are going to be a part of this team and who the project manager will be if you have any, and select a project viewer if you have any on your workspace at the moment. You could also select the properties, meaning the weekly limit of working on this specific project per member, as well as the hourly rate. So, this is especially useful if certain members do have their own hourly rates, which may fluctuate depending on which projects they're working on. You can also select the screenshot mode for specific projects. Creating project groups is just as easy. So you simply create a new project group, and same thing as we did with the projects and members, you simply drag and drop. Moving on to the contracts. So the contracts just give you the information and ability to edit each member's hourly rates, especially depending on the project they work on, their weekly working limits, their specific screenshot mode, and whether or not you want to unassign a contract to a specific user. So then, right after the project, of course, we can start talking about the tasks. So, as you can see, when you open up the task section, you're met with a list of the projects. So, you can scroll and see all of the projects, select one, for example, partnerships, and see that we have multiple tasks. So, in progress, we have the partnership with remote.com going on, and in the open ones, meaning that they're available to work on but not currently in progress, are the partnerships with the native teams and the one with Todoist. You can even select specific assignees. For example, if I only select myself, I will only see the projects, rather tasks that only apply to myself. So you could do this with pretty much any member. And keep in mind, we also offer subtasks. So you can have one project and 5 tasks, but pretty much an endless number of subtasks for each one. So this is a great way to stay organized. Now, moving on to the finances section, WebWork offers you the ability to create payments directly to your employees without having to use a third party software. You're also available to create invoices for your employees or other people in order to receive payments. We have payouts and payroll, and even expense tracking, which is something I really wanted to show you. So, right now, we don't have any expenses tracked yet. So, let me show you how. You simply go to Add Expense and name it. So, for example, trash bin for the office. You can select a date, as in when it was purchased, the amount spent, for example, 5 USD, I'll say, category, I would say office supplies, and the project it was for, no specific project, so I won't select any, and even add a note. So, what would be a good note for a trash bin for the office? I kept needing a place to throw away uh, shredded paper. And there you have it. You can even have it billable and attach files or pictures if need be. So once we save this, you now have one of your expenses tracked. So pretty much all employees are able to do this, and depending on what you have tracked in your expenses, the amount for each one is going to accumulate in the project budgeting section as well. So if you spend, for example, $5 multiple times on one specific project, your project budget is going to show that this project had, I don't know, tens or dozens of dollars spent on it already based on the expense tracking right here. Moving on to every employee's favorite feature, which is probably the time off section. So here you have holidays, leave, and leave balance. Let's start with the holidays. Of course, everybody has their own holidays depending on which country or even the city you live in. So here we have the US Independence Day, the 4th of July, and for us, that's a non working day, which you can configure when you add a holiday. You can also choose whether it applies to the entire workspace or only specific teams or titles. So the channel you might notice here just refers to whether or not we will receive announcements for it on the either the WebWork chatbot or through Slack, which is an integration that I would have to have in this case. It also comes with a message if you do have it as an announcement in either WebWorks chat or Slack. Here we have Happy Independence Day, everybody. Enjoy your free day. And of course, you could delete it if you'd like. So let's see. Add a holiday. You could have a holiday or Memorial Day, which really isn't a holiday. You can name it. For example, um, National Bee Day. I'm pretty sure that's a real holiday. You can have it workspace wide, team wide, or custom. You could have a specific date for it, let's say today, and select the channel where it will be announced, and also write a little message if need be. And here you can see that you can select whether it's a non working day or a working day. Because, as we know, not all holidays, unfortunately, are non working days. So you totally have the option to specify that right here. Now, moving on to leave. In the leave section, you can see the pending leave requests, which you can approve or deny. In leave requests, you could see the policy it refers to, depending on what policies you have in your workspace settings. The reason, this person says personal, if it's a paid holiday or not, which is again depending on the policy that you select in your settings. You can see when it was created and which date it is for and who it was created by, of course. So if you go to approved, this is where you can see the leave requests which have already been approved of or the ones in rejected. So pretty straightforward. So leave balance will actually show you how many days people have taken for leave and in accordance to which leave policy, and pretty much how many days they have left. For example, Arman has taken half a day off. So if our leave policy says that somebody can take 20 days off for vacation and he's taken zero point 0.5 days, meaning half a day, half a shift, then his leave balance says that he has 19 days and a half left for him to request leave. And here we have the shifts feature. So how do you create a shift? You go right here at the top right of the screen and you name it. So let's say part-time for Jenny. You select the members it applies to. So in this case, it would be Jenny to Armenian. And you can apply to newly added members too if it's not for one specific individual. You can select the time zone it refers to, and this is to ensure that everybody's attendance statuses are completely accurate to their own timing. You can have a start date and the minimum required hours. Let's do the 18th, whether it's a recurring shift or just something one off. And you select the working days. For example, there was a time where I was working not on Tuesdays, not on Thursdays, only on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, part time. And yeah, you have a start time and end time, options to repeat weekly or bi weekly, and until when if this is a seasonal type of contract. And each member can have multiple shifts. So if you have an employee who's working a few hours in the morning and then a few hours at night, you totally have the option to create two separate shifts for them. That's pretty much it for our main features, so let's move on to the other ones. WebWork offers a communication service, so we have video meetings and a chat as well, which I can actually show you how that looks. So here we have files, saved items, direct messages, threads, and channels. So in general, I could write a nice little message for my team members. How is everybody? WebWork also offers certain tools like stand-ups and announcements. So stand-ups are basically small messages that come in at a specific time every single day to specific channels where employees can write down what they've been working on or what they have as a to-do list for the following day. So you could use this in WebWork or even as an integration with Slack. And the same thing for announcements, which usually has to do with either holidays or specific events that may come up. Moving on to the multiple integrations that WebWork offers, these are probably some of our favorites. We have task management integrations available, for example, ClickUp, Asana, and Jira, which are our most popular, as well as Todoist, which is gaining a lot of popularity. We have code development like GitHub and Bitbucket, communication, which is for now Slack, which all of us really love to use, and so do our clients. We have finance, which is with Deal and Bitwage, for example, and we even offer an integration with Zapier. So if you use any of these tools on a day-to-day basis, you can actually very easily integrate them with WebWork. We also offer migrations, so you can migrate your account from HubSpot and start tracking with us, and even migrate from Insightful as well. And of course, there are certain perks that come with some of these integrations. For example, if you integrate with Deal, you actually get 20% off for a year, which is a great deal if you ask me, quite literally. So that's pretty much it for a lot of what WebWork has to offer in terms of the dashboard. As previously mentioned, we have advanced settings so that you can customize all of these features that we just went through. In order to access them, all you need to do is to go to the top right of your screen and click on the settings icon. Now, this is going to bring you to the advanced settings. Here, you can see a lot of the features that we went over, and when you click on them, you'll be able to customize so much. Let's start with the profile settings. Here is where you can adjust your name and birthday. The birthday is going to be most important if you have holidays or day offs, rather, for certain birthdays. So this might be visible to your colleagues, especially if you have announcements for everybody's birthdays. As for the name and surname, this is just what's going to be displayed when others view your profile on the workspace. And right next to it is where you can manage your password and custom API if you have it. Next up, we have accounts. This is just going to show you all of the workspaces you have access to with the same email. Speaking of emails, right underneath that is where you can select what type of email notifications you'd like to receive. For example, you could receive certain types of reports or emails for new projects when they're created or timesheet approvals too. You can also select email notifications for tasks that you are not assigned to or just the ones that email you about status changes, etc. Next up, we have the workspace category. So underneath that, you'll see workspace intuitively, and here you'll see configuration and permissions. So in the configuration section, you can name your workspace, decide which currency is going to be used in the payroll section, for example, and the overall time zone that it operates in. And of course, because we have users from all over the world, you can choose whether to operate with a 12-hour or 24-hour format. Next up, we have billing. This is where you can select your payment methods, review information regarding your subscription. For example, when your next payments are going to be, the seats that it is for, meaning how many members you'll have, and whether or not you'd like for your payments to renew automatically or if you'd like to pay manually. And here is where you can see your current plan, as we offer Pro, Plus, and Premium. And if you're looking for an upgrade or even a more financially suitable plan for you, simply click on Pricing Plans for more information right from here. Underneath billing, you'll find something called features. This is a very straightforward setting. It just allows you to enable or disable certain features in your plan. For example, we've disabled mobile GPS tracking just because it's not something that we need for our work environment. Then you can go down to the tracker settings. So this is very similar to what we saw in the beginning, just with a little bit more information. So you can have the auto start option, which is what we discussed earlier. You can enable idle tracking or make your activity descriptions mandatory. And here you can select the maximum inactive minutes an employee can have on their device before it's considered idle time. Once it is considered idle time, they will receive a pop up asking them to select what they were doing, either a break, not working, or if they were working, they can describe what they were doing if you do make it mandatory by adding a mandatory activity description, which will just give them the opportunity to write down what they were doing. For example, making coffee, signing documents, etc. And here you'll have the reminder to write an activity description for your employees. So this is a little bit different from the mandatory activity description. This mandatory activity description will only really pop up once they've had idle time. However, the reminder to write an activity description will be to remind them to add one at the tracker. So this is the activity description that is going to be part of the data regarding their tracked time. For example, you could see that somebody tracked 2 hours on Tuesday while doing this activity. Now, remember how earlier in the video we talked about productive and non productive apps and websites. So, some employees might open a non productive app or website while they have their tracker on. So, you do have the option to send them a pop up warning them of this activity, as it can poorly impact their productivity analytics. You can also notify members when they are late for their scheduled time and notify them if they've turned off the tracker much earlier than when they're supposed to. So, if in their shift section it says that they need to clock out at 7 p.m. and they clock out at 6:30, then they will receive a pop-up the next day notifying them that they left early and to write a description of why, what happened, so that you can understand if this was necessary or an unnecessary early departure. Here in the Other Apps section, this is where you can select the maximum inactive hours that somebody can have their tracker on before it considers all of that idle time as them not actually working. So then it will automatically turn their tracker off after, for example, 12 hours. Under the general section of this, you can select whether or not you'd like to allow tracking without a project. So this just means that maybe they are doing work, but if it's not related to a specific project, then they won't need to select any project while they have their tracker on. Then you have allowance of overtime tracking. So if somebody's shift says that they should work from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., then not allowing overtime tracking would mean that they will not be allowed to track time from, let's say, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., because that would already be overtime. And here you have some more information regarding the tracker versions themselves. So you can allow people to track with the desktop app, which is recommended, or use the browser time tracker, which does have all the features we went over. However, it won't be able to take screenshots of the user's screen, so keep that in mind. Here you can also select whitelisted IP addresses. And here in the timesheet feature, you can select who can edit time without having to send a request to do so. Here, for example, we have three roles selected: the executive managers, team managers, and the project managers as well. So the only people who need to send requests in order to edit their time manually would be the employees. Then we have one role selected, which is the executive manager, because the admin is a given, of course, who can approve of other members' time requests. So, for example, if I am an executive manager in this case, I have the ability to reject or approve of certain timesheet edits. In the attendance settings, you can control how much grace employees have if they're late. So, for example, this is how much deviation they would have from their schedule. So, let's say they can start working if they're 10 minutes late and they can end 10 minutes early. And right here, you can disable tracking outside of their working hours. So even if somebody works from 10 till 7 or they have a minimum 7 or 8 hour shift, then that means that they will not be allowed to work outside of their scheduled hours, even if they're making up for lost time. And here you can select a reminder before their shift starts. So this is especially good if you have a team who do not really have the best time management skills like me. So this does come in handy. So you can select, for example, 15 minutes for them to receive a reminder email before their shift starts. Next up, we have the break settings. So remember when we talked about that small coffee icon in the small tracker window? That was the break setting, and these are kind of the more advanced settings for that. So this is where you create your break policies. For example, here we have the fresh air break policy, which is especially good because we work in an office where it can get a little bit stuffy. So we have 9 members total. So all of our members have access to this break policy, meaning they have the right to take this break. And this is the maximum minutes per member. So they can have fresh air for 30 minutes and it's back to work. So you also have the type. So there's paid and unpaid. Paid breaks will show up in a member's track time. However, unpaid breaks will not show up in their track time. However, people can make up for the time that they did not use from one of their breaks. So, for example, if the brunch break is 25 minutes and they only use 20 minutes of that paid or unpaid break, then the user will have the option to take another break under the same policy for the remaining minutes. And here are the leave settings. So these are your leave policies, very, very similar to what we did with the breaks just now. In order to create a new policy, you can name it, let's say, spring break, though I know this is not a high school. Members, let's let it apply to everybody and mark it as paid. You also have the option to allow or forbid negative balance. This just means if an employee has 20 days available for vacation from the entire year and they've used, say, all 20, then they'll still be allowed to request another leave even if they've used up all of their available days already. So usually, employers will have this selected as no for obvious reasons, but some companies allow more leeway, and we completely understand that, so you totally have that option. You can also have the reason for taking this required or optional for all or make it custom. You can have these durations annual or based on when an employee was hired, meaning added to your workspace. So you could have the working hours per day, the duration, which is, let's say, 20 days max. Some companies may have less or more, totally up to you. And your leave requests. So you can select how many days in advance a team member should submit a leave request. So for some people, it's okay if you have an emergency, you could select the leave request 1 day in advance, but you could also select, for example, 14 days in advance if you do need extra time to prepare before you allow an employee to go on PTO. So you totally have that option too. And you can exclude this from certain policies. So you may say, well, if you're going on vacation, then you might want to let me know 2 weeks in advance. But of course, if it's a sick day or an emergency, then you could have these policies made to be excluded from this advance notification. And here you can select which roles have the ability to approve or reject leave requests. So, for example, an employee or a project manager will need to request a leave, and an executive manager and the admin will be the ones, in this case, to approve or reject their leave request. You can also have members who have automatically approved leave requests. So that's usually going to be the admin, and the admin can select whether or not the executive managers or even the employees can have this ability. Now, let's talk a little bit more about our screenshot feature, which is a favorite from our clients all over the world because of how useful and insightful it is, which we did go over a little bit earlier, but here are the settings that show you all of the customizability you have in its regard. So let's start with the number of screenshots taken in a 10-minute interval. Of course, the purpose of a screenshot is to have access to some more information regarding what your employee is doing on their screen in a way that cannot be predicted. So, this is just going to make things a little bit more transparent and random. So, here you can select, for example, five screenshots taken every 10 minutes. For example, you can select 10 screenshots every 10 minutes, but that doesn't mean that one screenshot is going to be taken for every single minute. What it means is that these 10 screenshots will be taken at random times within 10 minutes. So, two screenshots might be taken within 2 minutes, and then another five might be taken within 2 minutes. And here we have these screenshot modes. So let's go through them. The screenshot mode is pretty much regular what you'd expect. You will have a small pop-up show up on the employee's screen notifying them that a screenshot was taken a few seconds ago. And as an employer, when you go to view the screenshot, it's going to be completely clear. Then you have the no screenshot if you do not require or want screenshots of the user's screen. You have the background mode, which is the same as the regular screenshot mode, except for the fact that they will not be notified after a screenshot has been taken. This is usually because some employees may find it a little bit distracting whenever that small pop up of the screenshot comes in the corner of their screen. So they totally have the option, if you allow it, to have it on background mode. Then you have the blurred screenshot option. So this is the exact same as the regular screenshot option. They get the pop-up at the bottom right of their screen notifying them that a screenshot was taken a few seconds ago. However, the screenshots themselves are blurred. Now, this is usually to protect sensitive information like passwords or certain chats between other people. And you have a lot more customizability here as well. So you can allow screenshots to be deleted by managers or the employees themselves. You can allow employees to view their own screenshots or to not be able to view their own screenshots. You can allow project viewers to view member screenshots or not. Project viewers, as discussed, are members that you can add for free, and you have complete control over what they are or are not able to view. So, this is, of course, very, very important, especially if you're keen on protecting your employees and any sensitive information. Of course, it all depends on you. So, you can also enable category based screenshot blurring. So, why would you select this if we already have the blurred screenshot mode? Well, you might want to have background mode on. So, nobody's distracted by the pop up that comes up on their screen. But you might also want to have these screenshots blurred at the same time. So, in that case, you would select, for example, background mode and then select all of the categories for the blurred screenshots, or just specific categories like communication stuff to protect chats and similar things. And you could also select the category to be shown in the activity details. Next up, we have the tasks. Here you can rename the statuses as well as select different colors for each of them. This is especially good if you like to have an aesthetically pleasing and customized experience, so you totally have that option as well. You also have certain permissions regarding the tasks. For example, would you like to allow tasks to be edited by people with the employee role? Would you allow employees to see, create, edit, and delete tasks for other employees? Well, all up to you. Then we have the finances. So here are some of our payment gateways. You could connect with Stripe or Bitwage, though we have many more coming soon. And you can also have some more control over the invoices by creating a due date for them and whether or not you like to remove the WebWork branding from your invoices. Now we have the activity level configuration. So you can select what you consider low or medium activity levels as well as medium or high. Here we also have the bot settings. So if you have the birthday messages enabled, then depending on the birthdays that people select in their account on the profile settings that we went through a little earlier, they can receive congratulatory messages on your preferred channel, either in Slack if you have the integration or the WebWork chat as well. Similarly, you can have reports enabled for the daily or weekly reports on Slack or the WebWork chat too. Next up, we have WebWork AI. So here you have some more control over the credits and the permissions. So you may not want everybody to be using the AI feature, which would be understandable. So here you have a little bit more control over that. And last but not least is our white label feature. So you can get this feature for only $1 per user per month. So this will allow you to remove WebWorks branding from the tracker and to put your company's logo and colors instead. So that pretty much wraps up all you need to know about WebWork Time Tracker. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this tutorial, and I really hope that it helped you learn to navigate our tools a little bit better. Keep in mind that you can actually have a 14-day free trial with no credit card attached, so you can learn a little bit more about it from your first-hand experience too. In order to do so, simply click on the links below in the description and have a great day. Happy tracking!